Welcome to Stereo 3D Productions, everyone. It's already time for our second official UEVR injector guide, and this time we're going for a much bigger target. Today we're going to get Borderlands 3 set up to run in VR with an adaptation that's practically just as good as, in some ways better than, the original Borderlands 2 VR port from a few years back. Before we get to that, I need to point out that these UEVR guides are subject to changes. Sometimes I can screw something up or discover something new after making a guide, so when that happens, if I need to either replace this guide with a new one or mention an update about something, I'll both pin a comment telling you what to do and repeat this at the top of the video's description. So if you see a pinned comment from me, please read it or check the top of the description for any updates. If there's nothing there, then go ahead and sit back, relax, and enjoy this UEVR showcase. Borderlands 3 was my very first UEVR experience, and I honestly could not have started in a better spot. This game showcases UEVR's ability to transform flat, lifeless 2D games into a full-blown room-scale VR adaptation. Through UEVR, Borderlands 3 is transformed, converted into a full-blown VR game with great gunplay, first-person vehicle controls, and many other amazing elements of a purpose-built all-VR title. In this video, I'll show you how to get this set up for yourselves, cover the basics in terms of controls and gameplay, and then we'll list the possible issues you could run into with this adaptation. I've done a good dozen hours of testing with this game, ranging from simple solo gameplay, testing various characters, and even trying co-op gameplay, the feature that was shockingly, depressingly missing from Borderlands 2 VR. So let's not stall any longer, time to get started. It's a quick setup and it won't take very long. The first step with a UEVR adaptation is to get yourselves a copy of UEVR Injector. In this case, we don't need to do anything too special. We just download the latest release version of UEVR Injector, which will be linked in the description. From that link, click on Download Stable Release, and on the Releases page, there's a download link right at the top. Once you've downloaded the archive, extract it in a folder you will remember, preferably one where you intend on permanently keeping your copy of UEVR Injector. That's right, this is not an installer, it's basically a folder with the program's files already inside of it. To launch UEVR Injector, just run uevrinjector.exe. You'll notice the first time you run this that UEVR will complain about administrator mode. To resolve this, close the app completely, then right-click on uevrinjector.exe and go to Properties. Once the Properties window opens, click on the Compatibility tab. In that screen, just check the option to run this program as administrator. Hit OK, and the next time you launch UEVR Injector, you'll be prompted for administrator permissions. You'll also notice that after opening UEVR Injector like this, its administrator mode warning will be gone. With UEVR Injector in administrator mode, it's now time to get the custom Borderlands 3 profile for VR. You'll find this profile linked in the Flat2VR Discord, which I highly recommend you join, by the way. I'll be posting a link to join the Flat2VR Discord server, along with another link to the exact post containing the custom profile. Yes, by the way, I am aware of the website UEVRProfiles.com, but the creators of that site did not yet give us a way of linking to a specific game. If you want to use the UEVRProfiles.com website, I will give you a link in the description as well. Wherever you choose to download the profile from, save it somewhere you'll remember. It's a zip file, but you won't need to extract anything. After downloading the profile, open UEVR Injector if that's not already done. On the left side of the window, click Import Config. In the Browse dialog, locate the profile zip we just downloaded and click Open. You can accept the warning, this profile comes with a plugin and it's known to be safe. UEVR will open a folder to show you the extracted profile files, meaning you've completed this step successfully. Now, there's a few options in this window, but there's only one I need to point out here. You can choose whether to run this over OpenXR or OpenVR. In most cases, or almost all cases, I recommend OpenXR. In fact, with this game, I've actually tested this in the past with OpenVR and ran into all sorts of issues. Heck, on Oculus runtimes, OpenVR would make SteamVR correctly open, but once the game would load in, the field of view was all warped out of shape. Given you can get the same benefits with OpenXR, including the ability to use SteamVR through Oculus runtimes, just stick to OpenXR. Leave UEVR Injector running as we're about to use it to hook into Borderlands 3. Go ahead and install Borderlands 3 if you haven't already. Now, launch the game. Even if it's the first time you run it, the injection should work just fine, so you don't even need to stop by the desktop version. Do what I did and go straight into VR. The catch here is you have to be quick, or at least quicker than usual with UEVR titles. As the game launches, switch over to the UEVR window and open the Processes dropdown. You should be able to find Borderlands 3 in there. Select it and hit Inject as soon as possible. The rule of thumb here is you have to hit Inject before the studio logos are done playing. If you try to inject once the game is already at the title screen, it will not work. Now, don't get too impatient if you did this right, because you won't see the game in your headset right away. First, you have to look at Craptrap doing a little dance at the bottom of your monitor for roughly 15 seconds, and then finally, you'll be greeted with the opening screens in your headset. Now, we have some in-game settings to change, but I'll want to get you out of this awful title screen as soon as possible. It's not a terrible title screen, in fact it's got 3D and all and makes a great VR starting point, but unfortunately your right controller will rotate the camera in this scene, and it honestly does not feel good at all. First off, don't worry, that's not how the game runs when you're playing. Let's just get this bit over with, start a new game right away. You can use the menus just like you would with a gamepad, but keep in mind that the Oculus X and B buttons are inversed. So if the game says X, hit B, and if the game says B, hit X. Pick your character, get through the intro scenes, and finally, once you're given full controls, after Craptrap is done yapping his soul away, we can finally get to business. First, for the quest enjoyers, step 1, or step 0 actually, press the insert key on your keyboard or quick press both your thumbsticks simultaneously to bring up your UEVR in-game menu. This game is going to need D-pad input, and with UEVR the D-pad is actually a configurable input combo. Go to the input section and change D-pad shifting method from the default right thumb rest plus left stick to the much better, very convenient option gesture head plus left stick. I don't know why UEVR comes with a thumb rest option. It's an unusual bind, and if you're not even aware of its existence, two things will happen. You'll be dropping map markers randomly, dozens of times each session, and your movement will just stop responding also at random times. See, the thumb rest is meant to rest your thumb. With the default setting, every time you rest your right thumb, it'll change your left stick input to D-pad inputs and suppress the normal stick input until you get your finger off the thumb rest. I've even tried this option with complete awareness of its existence, and yet I still kept accidentally grazing my thumb rest constantly. With the gesture head plus left stick option, this will work a lot better. If you need to use the D-pad, just raise your left hand to the side of your head, at which point your left stick will become the D-pad. During this time, your controller will vibrate to let you know the shift is in effect. Lower your hand back down to return to normal stick inputs. By the way, that's the only setting you would ever need to change in UEVR for this game. Turns out the decoupled pitch is already enabled. Good. And now we can close out of those options and get to the game's own settings. This also has a really simple step. Put aside the graphics settings that you can tweak to your most precise desire, or almost. We only have one thing to change. By the way, I recorded these settings changes in 2D to improve readability in the video, but like I said earlier, in order to avoid the title screen's right controller rotation, you can do this all from a loaded game, as in the headset itself the menus are perfectly readable and clear. This game's menu and inventory button with UEVR happens to be the Quest's left system button. The same button that insists on opening the SteamVR dashboard with a short press and the virtual desktop menu with a double press. For a while I resorted to using only Quest Link runtimes to avoid this issue, but a viewer by the name of Draco9458 finally gave me the solution, and thank you so much! I'm so surprised you had to discover this out of desperation instead of it being easy to find online, but if you hit X and Y at the same time, it substitutes the system button. So much for having to constantly resort to AirLink. With this solution, I can now go back to Virtual Desktop and cook my GPU off with some much higher specs for science. When in-game, to open the game menus, short press the system button, or like I just mentioned, use the X and Y shortcut on Virtual Desktop or SteamVR. From the menu, go in Settings, then go to Accessibility, and in there just disable the controller aim assist option. Voila, that is the totality of the required changes. Technically, you're good to go and play, but of course, this is a stereo 3D productions guide, and so we're gonna take things further and go in the graphics settings. Good thing here is that the graphics settings are also pretty simple. See, this game runs really well relative to average UEVR injector enabled games, and so you may have little to nothing to do here. Some important notes to make. First, this game can run in DirectX 11 or 12. I've been using 12 since the beginning. I meant to try out 11, but I just keep forgetting to change this every time I play. Second, don't use the game's own resolution setting, as it will not have any effect on your actual UEVR experience. To change resolutions, just use your VR Runtime's resolution setting, be it in the SteamVR menu or in the MetaQuest Link app per device settings. This game does have resolution scale options, by the way, but again, don't use that, as it will be inefficient and won't look as good as if you just change your resolution directly in your VR runtimes instead. In fact, the in-game setting only allows 100%, 75%, and 50%, which is super weird. Why isn't this thing a damn slider with arrows? Just stick to your runtime settings. Last, make sure to turn off limit frame rate, as UEVR and your runtimes will take care of running at the proper limit. If you go to the Advanced tab of the graphics settings, this is where you'll find all the useful stuff for performance other than resolution. Personally, I started with graphics quality on Ultra, but then I turned off anti-aliasing because I'm already super sampling. And for the other options that can make a difference for performance, lowering shadows, draw distance, clutter, and terrain detail will make a significant difference. Make sure to scroll down to post-processing too, because you have to disable object motion blur and camera motion blur unless you want to feel drunk while you play or something. Keep in mind that if you're running in a context where you don't have access to a tool like FPS VR or just don't own it at all, this game has its own built-in frame rate meter. Under General in the Advanced Settings graphics options, toggle Display Stats to FPS or All, and you'll get a reading at the top right corner of your UI at all times. It's no FPS VR, but it will help you know when and why your game could be dipping. One of the other reasons I like changing these settings in a loaded game rather than on the title screen is I can find a spot that struggles more than others in the actual game and tweak the settings there, going back and forth between the menu and the game until I set up something that works. When you have the game configured correctly and you have your performance balance in place, you're ready to go ahead and play Borderlands 3 in VR. This video's not over though. I spent roughly 8 hours in this game, all in VR, and I can safely say that I may have seen all the issues that UEVR can cause with this game, and by now I'm familiar with almost all the inputs. So we're going to go over all that, starting with the controls. Borderlands 3 VR almost controls identically to Borderlands 2 VR, bar a few small differences, notably with vehicle steering and menu navigation. As a rule of thumb, if you use UEVR Injector at all, you can pretty much find the control reference for any game, since unlike the RE Framework days, Praydog has given us extensive documentation on UEVR, including a section that details the default input mapping on all VR kits. This is really useful because normally UEVR adaptations will run as if you're using a gamepad, and so once you know the default mapping it uses, you can apply this to any game you want. I'll give you a link to the UEVR control mapping documentation page in the description below. As for this game, because I found there were a lot of different things to remember, all the things you can do with relatively a lot fewer buttons than the keyboard, mind you, I decided to make a game-specific chart so I could help you speed your way into carefree gameplay. To access the menu, quick press your left system button, or over virtual desktop or SteamVR, quick press X and Y at the same time. For the inventory, long press the left system button, or X and Y, or left A and B on index. To walk, use your left stick, and to sprint, press on your left stick. To rotate, use your right stick and press the right stick to crouch. To fire, it's right trigger. To focus your aim or aim down sights, it's left trigger. Right A is your confirm button, left A on index or left X on quest is cancel. Right B is reload, left B on index or left Y on quest is change weapon. Grenades are on the right grip button, special skill on the left grip button. In menus, right and left grip button will change tabs. Finally, with your current D-pad shifting method, raise your left hand to the side of your head and your left stick will become the D-pad, where for example D-pad up adds a map marker. Now, in vehicles, things differ slightly. Left stick forward and backward will control your throttle. To steer, you rotate your right hand. It's not a stick input. Your right hand's physical rotation is what steers the car. It's really awesome once you get the hang of it, by the way. To aim, use your right controller as if holding a gun. Alternate fire is left trigger. To switch seat, hit the left B on index or left Y on quest. To exit the car, hit left A on index or left X on quest. When you're in the gunner seat, to fire, use left trigger. Finally, to boost, use left grip button. Honestly, this control set is the reason why some will say that this version of Borderlands VR is superior to the studio-made Borderlands 2 VR edition. This isn't quite a correct statement, given you're going to see why in the upcoming known issues section, but the control scheme itself is actually really awesome, and definitely one of the aspects that plays a lot better than Borderlands 2 VR does. The gunplay is made amazing and carefree with this mapping, and the vehicle control is an absolute treat once you get the hang of that right controller steering method. It almost feels like every car can just turn on a dime and respond in the most dependable of ways. Man, this is a massive far cry from the days of Vorpex, where we were driving the Borderlands 1 cars in third person with god-awful mouse steering. This Borderlands 3 VR adaptation could actually spin off into a really cool VR racing game with vehicles like this. Now, I just said this still isn't perfect, and we're about to find out why. It's time to move on to the known issues with this adaptation. There's a user by the name of Moodeye who commented on my first Borderlands 3 video on Stereo 3D Plays, and the comment reads, "Sad how much better this is than the official VR port for 2. And I wanted to agree with this. I wanted to so badly. In fact, when I replied to this, I thought this was the case. But no, after some more digging, sadly, this is slightly behind compared to the official Borderlands 2 VR port, because it actually has a few important yet not game-breaking issues. 4 of them to be specific, 3 related to the vehicles, and 1 related to the cutscenes. First off, some of the vehicles will simply be undrivable due to visibility issues. The UEVR profile is set to position you in first-person view when you enter a vehicle, but it's not yet smart enough to know what offsets you need to have in order to be in the driver's seat in each vehicle. Instead, you just spawn in the center seat of the vehicle. This makes the big rig nearly impossible to drive. You can get away with some limited driving by trying to stare through the truck's left side window, but if you're playing with a friend who's moving the gunner turret, the base of that turret will almost always rotate in a place that blocks your view completely. Not to mention, when that happens, your view becomes up-close, cross-eyed fuckness. Still on the theme of visibility, I was surprised when I tried my friend's upgraded Cyclone. The hoop was not blocking my view enough to prevent me from driving. It kind of felt like the halo in a Formula 1 car. It's one of my favorite vehicles already. However, I cannot say the same for the stock Cyclone, which has no gaps to see through in the hoop. This one is solid, and it also has a much bulkier upper mount that will force you to lower your head to see in front. It's drivable, but it's very hard to see ahead of you. You kinda had to zigzag your way to see in front, as if you were taxiing with an extra 300 stunt plane. Next, still on the topic of vehicles, VR players cannot use the gunner turret from the gunner seat. Right now it's broken in a way where I honestly don't know where it's even trying to aim. Not one of the inputs or axes on either controller seems to resolve this. The gunner turret appears to always be shooting straight down when operated from the gunner's seat in VR, and so the most purpose you'll have for that seat is to let your friend drive while you enjoy the ride. Keep in mind that this seat is really weird because when the vehicle steers, you will not. Instead, the vehicle rotates around you. This is to keep steady when you're aiming at something, and you need to turn yourself to match the vehicle's direction if you want to look forward. I can't really deem this an actual problem. In fact, it will make shooting easier when the damn previously mentioned turret aim is fixed, but it's just really weird and you might think something's wrong if you're not aware of this. Finally, in the major vehicle issues, don't walk far away from your play center when you're in one of the vehicles in any seat. You're going to see here what happens when you do so. Look, I'm not saying this is normal procedure. I knew this was going to screw something up, but I had to open my UEVR injector menu in the heat of the moment, which required a short walk to the keyboard because I didn't know about the controller shortcut for that menu yet. Press both thumbsticks, and I did the short walk while I was in my friend's car. And this completely fucked up the attachment point of the passenger seat on that very car for the rest of our session. Reset standing origin, Quest Link's own reset view feature, recenter, I tried everything. Heck, I tried walking back to the spot where I should be, and the game fought me back and kept me in that wrong spot. And that one specific vehicle's passenger seat remained stuck like that for the entire session, whether I would disembark, re-embark. Fortunately, it did not affect other cars, but I'm sure if I walk away from the seat in those, the same problem would arise. The last major issue I need to bring up isn't vehicle related and doesn't happen during your main gameplay, thankfully, but all of the cutscenes in this game will have your right controller rotate the main camera as if it were attached to it. And a good number of cutscenes, I'd say about 75% so far, are capped at 30 frames per second. When the two issues are combined, it can get pretty hardcore on the VR legs. I've looked into the frame rate cap issue far and wide, and besides some unhelpful commenters saying the affected cutscenes are pre-rendered videos, they are not pre-rendered videos. Rather, these are fully in-engine renders, just like anything else in this game. It's very obvious that they're not videos in the VR adaptation, as you can see one playing here, one that is affected by a 30 frame per second cap. It's almost as if Gearbox hard-coded this limit in some of the cutscenes as they were worried about overall performance, because I have not for the life of me been able to disable this, and I honestly have no good explanation for this. It's a Borderlands 3 issue, and if anyone has a real solution, I'd be happy to get some leads in the comments. I need to point out a fifth major issue, but this is one that you'll only get over Virtual Desktop. And this is really not a big deal to fix. Every time I pick either HEVC 10-bit or H.264 Plus as the codec and launch this game through UEVR Injector and Virtual Desktop, I get a damn brightness offset between my right eye and my left eye. It's a very substantial offset, and it does make the game unplayable. Fortunately, when this happens, all I have to do to resolve the issue is set my Virtual Desktop stream's codec back to automatic, then relaunch my Virtual Desktop session and fire up Borderlands 3 VR anew. This keeps happening to me because I often revert to HEVC 10-bit as it works so well, but yeah, Borderlands 3 and UEVR won't like that, so you'll have to toggle back to automatic if you want to avoid the issue here. At this point, the rest of the issues are minor and debatably nitpicks. First, because the UI is tied to your right hand, the crosshair that appears within it will lead to confusion. Just ignore it and shoot by either looking at where the bullets land or just use the gun's own sight to aim. You might miss a shot here and there, but it ain't the end of the world. This is Borderlands, just shoot from the goddamn hip if you have to. No, seriously, I've learned to ignore the crosshair and that pretty much resolved the issue. The aim can be done naturally with the gun model, and the slower moving bullets are really easy to hipfire, so this became less and less of a problem for me. If the crosshair bothers you a lot, there appears to be a crosshair mod available. Yeah, this game does not have an option to turn the damn thing off, so I guess the community had to take care of that. I haven't used it myself since, like I said, the issue became less and less prominent for me and no longer is a problem. However, you can get this mod in the Flat2VR Discord thread about this game. Another minor issue is the map looks really weird because it's rendering in native stereo, left and right eye views in one frame, and while it's fully usable, it's just annoying to have everything smaller than it needs to be because of the native stereo render. Like I said, it's just an annoyance, and the map is in fact fully usable just like all the rest of the menus. Finally, one more, even less prominent issue is the fact that UEVR can only make your dominant hand aim. The way this injector works is it attaches most of the camera's mechanics to one of your hands, including the aim ray trace. Basically, everything the camera does except the image capture, which remains where your head should be, becomes attached to your hand. As a symptom of this, when you have a left-handed weapon, like for example Moze has a left-handed gun in mech mode, that gun's aim will actually be dictated by your right hand, not your left hand. This is far from a problem as long as you know about it. Yes, it's a bit weird to have a weapon that appears to be on your left, shoots with the left trigger, but aims where your right hand is pointing, but it wasn't too hard to get the hang of this, and given offhand aim isn't frequent in this game, this really isn't prominent enough to taint a playthrough. It's worth noting that it may be possible to get a left-handed setup with UEVR, but it seems to me it would take quite a while to get it working right, and I'd have to go through a lot of annoyances to make it work. So be warned, left-handers, this may actually give you hell, but albeit may be possible to modify the setup for left-handed use. Borderlands 3 VR was my first experience with UEVR Injector, and this actually gave me an excellent first impressions of UEVR itself. First off, this being an injector, I expected the potential complexity of apps like Vorpex, something that never materialized even after now having gone through a series of UEVR adaptations. And it turns out that UEVR is orders of magnitude simpler, because it actually renders the game through your VR runtime's pipeline and completely takes out the need to mess with basics like field of view and head tracking, and allows for a lot more clever customizations thanks to it being an engine-specific injector, such as attaching the aim and the weapon to one of your hands, controlling movement orientation like a real VR game would, and even controlling some of the graphics options to ensure that you have the most VR-friendly setup possible. Not only does this tool convert Borderlands 3 into a game that's about 95% of the way to an out-of-the-box VR game, but it does it in a manner that is damned easy to configure. Yes, this video was long because I wanted to go through the controls, the graphics settings, and the possible issues, but in the end, the setup part is only minutes long because that's how long it takes to get going with this thing. This is one of the smoother running UEVR adaptations that can even cater to lower spec systems, and so once you're set up and good to go, get ready to have to frequently remind yourself that this adaptation is not official. I've been able to do everything I'd want from a VR port in this thing. The movement is carefree, the jumping is electrifying, and the gunplay is spot on, the way you'd expect a Borderlands game to feel in VR. Yes, you'll be reminded that this is in fact a forced retrofit when you run into the god-awful cutscene framerate caps, or when the unwanted right controller camera rotation kicks in during said cutscenes, but I'll say after having gone through a few of these now, I tend not to get taken out of it anymore, as I'm kind of paying attention to said scenes, and I've grown used to just not moving my right controller until those scenes are done. More importantly, one of the reasons why a lot will debate that this adaptation is better than Borderlands 2 VR is the presence of multiplayer co-op. Yeah, as I said twice in this video already, the omission of multiplayer in Borderlands 2 VR is Haha, borderline depressing, haha. No, seriously, though, I still can't wrap my head around how ridiculous that was, and thankfully with Borderlands 3 you're not restricted into solo gameplay. In fact, this game will make a great game to play with friends. Whether they're using VR or not, it doesn't matter. This is like Phasmophobia but with guns. It works for everyone on everything and everyone can play together. Honestly, if Tim Burton, the creator of this profile, could find ways to patch off a few of the issues I mentioned in the previous segment, each issue less would just reinforce this adaptation as one of the best injector retrofits available out there. I think the most important things to get out of the way in order would be to first find a way to suppress right controller rotation in the title screen and the cutscenes. Yes, in my opinion, this issue is more important than even the vehicle visibility issue. It really sucks because the game has an amazing intro cutscene that would play really well were it not for the frame rate cap combined with the rotation. It's in full 3D and really flexes the game's good visuals, and it's the first thing you see loading into a new game after the silly opening video. The vehicle visibility issue actually comes second. Take that one away, and now you're practically beating Borderlands 2 VR. Finally, fix the gunner aim issue and we are smooth sailing with a VR version superior to Borderlands 2 VR all the way. Now, I wish someone could fix the 30 frames per second cap, because that one I don't think is possible. The way it's randomly applied from one cutscene to the other leads me to believe that this is fully hard-coded in the game's source. So I don't think it can be fixed without a purpose-specific mod or plugin made just for this. This goes without saying that Tim doesn't actually need to do shit. This is just my personal wish list. Otherwise, I genuinely have to thank Tim for his hard work, resulting in what we already have. Thank you so much. This is actually awesome. If no progress is made there, I will still continue playing this game because what we have right now is above and beyond my initial expectations, both for this game and for UEVR Injector in general. I'll keep up the Borderlands 3 series on the sister channel. I'm not too sure how to go about this because I'm still going through Borderlands 2 VR, but I may well try to focus more on co-op gameplay with Borderlands 3 while I continue the sequel solo, since that's the only way I can play it. That's all I have for you today, everyone. I hope you enjoyed and got yourselves a setup that lets you play Borderlands 3 in VR. Coax people you know into doing the same thing and have them join your game. This is honestly a great game to go at with friends, whether they also have VR or not. And I hope you have yourselves hundreds of hours of fun. You've been watching Stereo 3D Productions and this UEVR Injector showcase on Borderlands 3. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I yap a lot, but I swear I try to make it useful yapping, and it's great to see viewers stick around till the show's done. Have a good one. I shall see you next time.